Good evening, Facebook. This is Robert Kugler coming to you from the home office here in Springfield, Virginia at Four Leaf Publishing. Very happy to be here with you today. We are excited to share for the very first time this live event where we will be looking at the first novel in the Avery Angela series, The Last Good Day, award-winning novel, won the Virginia Author Award last year, and we're really proud of it. And it's the first book in the Avery and Angela series, of which there are four books. There's book one, which we have here today. There's book two, On the Road to Here. Book three, When Only Love Remains. And we also have Love Will Come to You, which is the fourth and final book in the series. So we are very excited to be here today, sharing with you. And what we're going to do is I'm going to do my very best we're going to read through the book, and we are going to, if I'm able to, share some of the pictures of the real life places and things that are involved in the book as well, if I'm able to figure out how to do that. So we are going to work on, okay, that's not helpful. We're going to work on sharing that. I don't actually see the thing I had seen before. It doesn't look like it's going to let me share screens. So what I will do is I will tell you that there's a blog post on my website that has pictures of some of the real life places and things that we are going to see during the first two chapters. And you can click on those. It's right there in the link. I can actually give you an even better link than that. Hold on here. And then we're going to just start. We're going to start off with reading the book. And for those of you who are big audiobook fans, this is the type of thing that going forward, we may do more of if there's interest, if this does well, if people are interested in it. And you can find the pictures that I was going to share right there in the chat area. But yeah, let's get to it and let's see what we have here. So again, we are reading today's edition of Robert Kugler Live, The Last Good Day Live. Will be us reading the first two chapters in The Last Good Day, which again is the very first book in the Avery and Angela series. And the book begins with part one, which is The Day Itself, and chapter one. The book is broken into three parts. There's the day itself, there's the very next day, and then there's the last good day. Those are the three parts of the book. So we're going to get started here. And this will be cross-posted to my author page here on Facebook, and it will also be posted to the Four Leaf Publishing page on YouTube as well. So this is hopefully the type of content that will be evergreen. And without further ado, let's get into it. So the day itself, chapter one. Angie has been my best friend since the first day of ninth grade. We met in third period phys ed. I'd been nervous all day since I was coming over from private school, and I really didn't know anybody. She sat right down next to me in the bleachers and started talking like we were old pals. I found her forwardness and quirkiness immediately appealing. That, and her plan to keep us from having to start the year in health class. I hadn't been paying attention, but since our last names both started with Y, and the PE department inexplicably started sign-ups with the A's, we were almost out of choices. Come with me if you want to avoid health class, she intoned in her best Terminator voice, which it turned out was not very good at all. I followed her, though, and we were soon enthusiastically signing up for badminton. We made a good team then, and have been pretty much inseparable ever since. Then we graduated, and I barely saw her all summer. I knew she was traveling and stuff, and I was supposed to spend a good chunk of the summer staying with Nana and playing whatever shows my guitar and I could book in Philly. Plus, I had that scholarship audition in New York to prepare for, but I had no idea how we got to the end of August and found ourselves planning our last day together before I left for Boston and she went across town to Princeton, having barely seen each other since the week after graduation. We talked pretty much every day, but I'd be lying if I said I hadn't really missed her. What bugged me the most is once I kind of looked at the calendar of the summer, I still didn't totally understand where she'd been and what she'd been doing for parts of it. It was a mystery I hoped to solve during our last day together before we had to be apart. I mean, I had really hoped we'd goof around all summer like we had in the past, especially since college was looming. But she'd been really hard to pin down except for that last day. So let's talk about that. We drove Mom's car down to Wildwood. I'm still surprised her silly little Mercury Tracer made it there and back. I picked Angie up at 6 in the morning. She was sitting on the porch when I pulled up. We hugged, and she climbed in and promptly dozed off before I got on to Route 539 south towards the Parkway. I almost got caught in that dumb speed trap in Allentown by the bridge, but I remembered to slow down in time. I was amazed they had a guy out there so early, but I think that speed trap might be the town's only revenue stream. Pretty sure the officer was asleep, but whatever. He certainly couldn't have been snoring like Angie, though. I'm used to it by now, and she looked really cute and peaceful with her feet curled up on the seat and her hood over her head. Like I said, this was the first time I'd seen her in weeks, and now that we were together, I realized how much I'd missed her. The drive was quiet until she woke up, suddenly full of energy, and pulled out her phone and queued up the soundtrack for Wildwood playlist, as she called it. This playlist has been meticulously researched and prepared for our journey, she commented, all perky and stuff, making jazz hands or spirit fingers at me as she hit play. I always get those two confused. Mom's stereo only had a cassette deck adapter, so I plugged that in, and we were on our way. I rolled my eyes a bit when the Indigo Girls' Closer to Fine came on first, but I know it's one of her favorites. Her mom was a huge fan of them and Cowboy Junkies and 10,000 Maniacs and that sort of stuff, and it stuck with her. Angie sang too loudly, as she always does. She still makes me play it for her sometimes, but I don't really mind. I pretend I mind, but I really don't. So we drove south, and we listened to music, and we talked, and she wanted to hear about my classes that started next week and all that stuff, even though I told her all of it over the phone. I remember looking over to her as I was telling her about my music theory class and noticing that the sun had kind of set off the slight reddish highlights in her hair. She'd added those for prom, and while they'd faded, the rising sun accentuated them in a way that made her look pretty. After we'd driven a while longer, I asked her why she wanted to go all the way down south to Wildwood when we could have gone somewhere closer, like Seaside or Manasquan or Spring Lake. Dear Avery, you know Seaside is an armpit. Yeah, there's that, but the other two, Manasquan and Spring Lake, are fine, but they are not Wildwood. Wildwood is, in fact, the only shore for a day such as this. I expected as much, but I really had no idea what our plan was besides going there. I'd been a few times with Angie and her family before, and it was definitely her people's beach. Her Aunt Jenny and Uncle Bob lived there, and they always let them stay in one of their houses. The beach itself was huge and nice, I guess, but Mom and I were never much for the shore. My vacations growing up were mostly going to Nana's, and I remember one week in the summer when I was maybe 11, and we drove out to Long Island, New York, in Mom's old Sentra. I was certain that rust bucket was about to explode. We went to visit Uncle Ted and whoever he was shacking up with or scamming then. Pretty sure it was the yoga lady who lived above the Walgreens. I remember she smelled like Vicks Vapor Rub, and the beach we went to was loaded with rocks and cigarettes. Pretty sure I saw a few hypodermics before Mom had seen enough and took us to dinner at the Ground Round since they had free popcorn. Outside of that epic journey, we mostly kept to Nana's. So, what exactly are we doing once we get there, Ange? I asked, since I didn't know. She laughed. You'll see, sweetie, though it may in the end be simpler to discuss what we aren't going to do. So, you're quoting Ferris Bueller to me now? And she smiled. About time you actually got a movie reference. It was a fair point. They aren't my specialty. So I asked, okay, so what aren't we going to do today? She made a show of thinking intently, squinting her eyes and furrowing her brow before waving her finger at me. Let's not rule anything out just yet. We're going to have a really, really good day, I promise. The last time Angie said, we're going to have a really, really good day, to me was prom. And she was right then, as she usually is. I didn't have any clue what her plan was on either day, now that I think of it, but I simply believed her. It felt really good to be with her again, so I let it go at that. I think beyond just missing my best friend over the summer, I'd been a lot more on my own than I was used to. I'd hung out with Will and Brian once or twice, and a lot of my free time was either trying to get booked to play shows or working on stuff to get ready to play shows. Now that we were together, I was pretty much up for anything. At least, I felt like I was. Chapter 2. The miles to Wildwood seemed to move quicker after we turned south onto the Garden State Parkway. I don't know my way around Wildwood, so she had to guide me from exit 4A to Rio Grande Avenue and around a few other places I don't remember until she had me pull into the parking lot outside of the convention center right on the boardwalk. It was early, so we didn't have to look for a spot. As we stepped out of Mom's antiquated tracer, Angie took a deep breath and exhaled and gave me an impish look. Man, had I missed my friend. Ah, it's magic time, my friend. Angie walked up the steps onto the boardwalk and turned right past the huge stone beach balls and the iconic Wildwood sign and made a beeline for the water. Come on! It was windy, and I felt cold and damp walking up the ramp towards the giant sign. When she took off, I started to chase her and almost got hit by a couple on an old tandem bike. They swore at me, in tandem, but I staggered to the rail of the boardwalk and saw Angie smiling and waiting for me at the bottom of the steps down to the sand. Come on, sweetie, there are scallop shells to find. She held out her hand to me and I took it. We walked down towards the water together. I had expected her to be halfway to the shoreline already, but she'd waited for me. Out of breath already there, girlie? I called as I caught up. That earned me one of the first what that earned me the first of the day's punches in the arm. Ow! What was that for? I'll show you out of breath, she said as she took off, leaving me fumbling with my sandals. By the time I caught up to her, she was already ankle deep in the rising tide of the morning. I remembered how she gets around the ocean, so I knew better than to interrupt her moment. I caught my breath and then walked over to her. She leaned her head on my shoulder. I think I heard her sigh a little, but I didn't say anything. Her hair felt warm on my shoulder, as it was kind of cool down by the water, and I felt that warmth even through my sweatshirt. We stood there a while before she patted my arm and moved off down the shore towards the big pier with the giant Ferris wheel that's on all the postcards. It looked sad without its lights on or anyone around it. You did good there, she chuckled. What do you mean? I asked, catching up with her. Just being quiet with me for a few minutes. I know how hard that is for you. She was not wrong. She wasn't being obnoxious either. I have a tough time with silence and usually babble on just to fill any awkward silences. Angie thinks it's because I grew up an only child in the house with Mom, who was dealing with her own stuff for a long time. There was no one to talk to, well, at least until Angie came along, and she hasn't let me get a word in since. I learned a while back how to tell when she needs me to be still. Haven't figured that out about anyone else, but I suppose I'll get there. Melissa Carpenter once told me and her cadre that she first started making out with me because I wouldn't stop talking and kiss her. I didn't complain at the time, but I guess I've got some work to do on understanding girls. Guys tend to be easier, though I don't really think I'm likely to stay tight with Pat and Brian or even Will, who I've gone to school with since first grade. Brian is off to Stanford to play golf, and Pat joined the Navy. Will and I haven't talked in months since our attempt at a summertime band blew up in our faces at Robin Kurtz's 18th birthday party. She wanted live music, and Will wanted to get with her so bad he agreed we'd play her party in 8 days. The fact that we didn't have a band or hadn't rehearsed did not deter him. It was an epic failure on every level. I really don't know that I'll stay close touch with any of my friends from high school at this point. If I don't get a scholarship for next year or start making a living playing gigs, I might be right back home looking for a job. Maybe I should make an effort with the guys after all. I don't know. Outside of Angie, there's really no one from home I'm likely to miss all that much, especially now. It's not like I didn't like the people I hung with out at school. I still can't even think about Seaside Heights without laughing out loud about some of the crazy nights I had with Will and Brian. The night that Will tried to pick up that emo girl with the nose ring by spending $42 winning a Pikachu doll still makes me laugh. He was around for some of the darker times too, but he never really asked a whole lot about it, even though it must have been pretty obvious I was dealing with a lot at home. And the three of us survived boy choir school together, so that's something. There's times I feel they don't really know anything about me. I guess that's partly my fault, as I've never really opened up about things with them. Angie's always been there, which has made the time we've been apart this summer a lot harder. Don't get used to it, Ange. I plan to blather on for the remainder of the day, I said when I felt I'd given her a decent amount of reflective silence. She was quiet a moment longer, and I started to feel a little awkward before she spoke again. I think that would be okay if you do, she said, as she stepped away into the water a bit, picking up a shell. She rinsed it off and looked back to me, smiling. Almost unblemished, she called back to me, holding up a scallop shell with a small chip broken off the left side. It's nice, I said, never really understanding her affinity for shells, scallop shells in particular. She scoffed at my lack of enthusiasm. It is way more than nice. You've got to consider the millions of years of development it took Mr. Scallop here to come up with this design, perfect only for this particular creature. You can count the ridges to see how many years it took to bring about this one shell. Then there's whatever this one little guy went through to lose his shell. His life ended somehow. Who knows when? And then, her eyes flashed excitedly. Then its wandering path led it to wash up at my feet in this exact moment, here with you. Her eyes fairly gleamed with the depth of it all, and the wind blew her hair away from her face. I want you to have this one, she said, as she walked towards me. She took my hand and placed the shell inside, then closing my fingers around it. Maybe if you're nice, Aunt Jenny will make it into a necklace for you. I groaned. Oh, come on, Ange. You know I don't do jewelry. I know you say that now, but you're going to have to try new things. You might love it. She was teasing me, but then she seemed inspired. It could be your fresh look for fall. The other artsy kids in Boston will love it. It's a nautical town, I hear, right? I tucked it into my pocket. I must have groaned again or something, I don't recall, but the next thing I knew, she was bopping me in the arm again and pushing me back towards the boardwalk and the convention center causeway. Come on, Grumpy Pants. We don't have to talk about the exciting adventure and higher musical education that awaits you. Instead, we will discuss what you are buying me for breakfast. I know I groaned this time. Why do I have to buy you breakfast? She batted her eyelids sweetly. Because you're a nice boy. Don't you remember? You keep telling me that, but I could be a jerk, and I think I'd still be buying breakfast. She nodded. Well, let's not find out. She punched my arm yet again, though not too bad this time, or maybe it had gone numb at this point. There were people on bikes all over the place. The boardwalk itself is about 2 miles long, and even though I'd come with Angie a few times over the years, I never really felt like I had my bearings or knew my way around. That, and it seemed like every other year, some old school restaurant or arcade turned into a stupid Dunkin' Donuts or a Chipotle or something. Always seemed sad when that happened. So, what is this nice boy buying you for breakfast? Oh, sweetie, we are here at the Jersey Shore. What do you think we're having? Please don't say scrapple. Oh, no, no, just, ew. Only your Nana still eats that slop, God love her. We, my fine feathered friend, will be dining on pork roll and egg sandwiches from Wawa. We continued north, passing the piers, the carnies, the water park, the mini golf, and casinos and arcades, and 5 versions of Mr. B's Pizza Palace that I thought was good last time we'd been there. I was impressed at the gumption of the carnies, some of them already out, trying to get people to pop the balloons and win a Sixers jersey from a guy who left the team 5 seasons ago or a stuffed minion. We stopped for a second to look out at the big playing surface where they hold the National Marble Tournament every summer. I laughed at it every time, and it always seemed like such a dumb game, but Angie loved it since she was a kid, and her older cousin placed 5th in the tournament. We moved on, passing a haggard looking fortune teller who was sitting outside her shop, already looking as though the day had gotten the better of her. Must have been a late night for Madame Marie, Angie remarked after we'd passed her. I can't believe that people actually give her money, I laughed. Oh, hush now. She's like a part of the furniture down here. People love her, and she seems like a nice lady. I scoffed at that. Yeah, we should probably turn around and go have our palms read, huh? I cracked myself up until I noticed that I was walking along the boardwalk completely by myself. I turned around to find Angie staring at me with a mischievous grin. I'm game if you are, Rockstar. I knew I was in trouble then. She had that look on her face where it was immediately clear I'd fallen right into her trap. I made a mental note to remind myself to shut up for the rest of the day, but I think we can guess how that went. I sighed and walked back towards her, and she clapped triumphantly. You're paying, though. Wouldn't have it any other way, sweetie, she replied, taking my arm in one of those black and white movies. Have you ever done this before? Once, a long time ago. Well, what did she say? Oh, I can't tell you that. Well, why not? It's not like this stuff is real. She put her finger to her lips and shushed me. No spoilers. She cracked herself up. She can be very silly, especially when she's getting her way. I'd never met anyone who could manage to smell like mothballs in a full ocean breeze, but there she was in living color, more or less. Good morning, Madame Marie, Angie began, louder than I thought was necessary. But when she promptly bolted up from what appeared to be a deep, open mouthed and open eyed sleep, I figured she knew what she was doing. Ah, yes, she coughed somewhat phlegmily. Yes, good morning, dears. Madame Marie was expecting you, of course. And I was just now meditating on the mysteries of future. I was about to say something snarfy, but Angie shot me a look that suggested I choose not to, which I did. We would be ever so grateful if you would give us a reading today, madam. Yes, yes. Madame Marie knows you have many questions, many worries and uncertainties, many questions indeed. Follow me, young ones. As she turned and moved through the curtain that led into her small room, I'm certain I saw sand and dust fly all over. Under my breath, in my best Yoda voice, I said, away with your weapon. I mean you no harm. Which made Angie giggle for a second before punching me in the arm again. Knock it off, she said. This is serious business. Keeping my Yoda voice as low as possible, I continued, yes, yes, for the Jedi it is serious too. I cracked myself up, but Angie was not having it. We followed Madame Marie through the curtain to a small waiting area with chairs and an old cloth tassel lamp. Madame Marie turned around suddenly in front of another thick curtain, smiling with her palm outstretched. And who will be financing our journeys then? All fees are due prior to our psychic excursion. I will, madam, Angie called, moving past me. I remember I got a face full of her hair as she kind of pushed past me in the cramped space. Madame Marie counted out Angie's cash, $20 for the two readings, paid in $5 bills. She looked us both over through dark and narrowed eyes for a way too long and uncomfortable silent moment. I was about to say that maybe we should just go when she pointed at Angie, saying, "You wait here. I read him first." She flung open the curtain dramatically, revealing what looked like a card table covered with a dusty tablecloth that reminded me of Nana's friend Bee, who always smelled faintly of patchouli. Before I could say anything, I was pushed into a velvety chair, and Madame Marie made a big show of closing the curtain, humming to herself as she slid the cash into a small box that she then tucked under her chair. When she finally stopped puttering, I got a look at her face up close and was surprised. She was old, at least 60 something, but her eyes were a striking blue. And if not for the wrinkles and weird costume and weirder accent, she'd probably be kind of pretty for an older lady. That said, I was kind of creeped out, but I figured I should just be polite to her like I would be to one of Nana's friends. So I'm not really sure how this works, but she raised her palms toward me and shushed me quickly. Of course you are not. If you had the gift of sight, I would have seen it on you from the start. Um, okay. So what do I do then? She finally sat down in an ornate chair full of pillows, and on settling herself into just the right position, she replied, "You sit quietly and give me your hands, child." And she placed her hands flat on the table. So even though I felt pretty silly, I did so, thinking of Angie waiting in the next room as Madame Marie grabbed my hands and squeezed them a little too hard until she had my attention. Her hands were strong and surprisingly smooth. "Okay, let us see what we can see here." And she seemed to be sizing up my palms and fingers the way Nana picks fruit, paying special attention to my left hand. She ran her fingers over my guitar calluses, raising an eyebrow at them before nodding, softly muttering something to herself. My right hand doesn't have as many calluses because I use my left for fingering and I use a pick a lot unless I'm playing acoustic. Both hands are pretty strong because I put a lot of time in on the guitar. Melissa used to complain that I should moisturize more, but I found it used to make my fingers too soft and didn't like how it affected my playing, so she had to deal with it. Hmm, two strong hands, but different strong. And you are clearly a water hand. Yeah, I don't know what that means. She sighed at my interruption. "It means I'll tell you when I'm done, dearie," with clear irritation in her tone, so I figured this was a good time to hush again. So I did. After a minute of feeling my hands, she took my wrists and turned them up to examine my wrists and the heel of my palm. Her thumb passed over the lump on my right pinky where I broke it 2 summers ago at St. Ambrose Catholic Church. I must have flinched or something because she commented, "It still hurts sometimes, yes?" It did, but I wasn't sure how to answer her. "Yeah, I guess." "It will for a while more. Then it will stop." I looked up and noticed she was studying my face. There was a brief moment of sympathy in her eyes, and suddenly she looked a lot younger than she did earlier. I thought for a moment she might even be around my mom's age, but she had that same hardened, don't mess with me, kid, I've seen it all look that mom always wears. She held my gaze again, another uncomfortably long moment, before returning to examine my right hand again. "You are right-handed, but your left shows you are working hard for something in your future. Your dominant hand shows past and present. Your other hand shows the impending." She began to trace the lines on my palm, which I'd never really paid much attention to. I don't really understand which one she was looking at, but she said something about a heart line and a hand line before humming and kind of tracing different lines until she said, "Interesting." "What?" I asked. I'd started zoning out, to be honest. It was way too warm and dark back there, and I felt sort of sluggish. She grinned at me, tapping one particularly long line on the top of my hand. You have been rather superfluous with your affections. Huh? Not overly bright, though, it seems. Well, I understood that, I replied, and I could actually feel the color rising in my face. She sighed somewhat kindly. It means you have given your heart away rather often, and perhaps occasionally without proper care for it. She traced the line again, where there were many little branches pulling away from it. But that could be in the past, perhaps. And she tapped the line again, as though pressing a single key on a piano. Perhaps what? I replied, suddenly interested. You'll see, perhaps. You must learn to keep your eyes open and see the things and people in front of you, not so much those behind or ahead. Maybe try to see things from the eyes of another now and then. I was starting to get frustrated, but then reminded myself that I didn't really believe any of this stuff, so I just sat back and let her finish. She moved to another line down the middle of my palm, making a lot of I see sounds, and said something about it all coming together, perhaps. The perhaps, they were starting to irritate me. Finally, she held my hands together and squeezed them before letting go and leaning back into her chair. She folded her hands in front of her and looked at me and sighed. If only you can get out of your own way, there is a clear path to happiness, my dear. Yeah, I don't know what that means, I said, since, I didn't. That is evident. You will, or you won't. Keep your eyes in front of you. What's a water hand? Among other things, it means you are artistic, emotional, idealistic, and occasionally without direction. Oh, I said, not really sure where to file all of that since it was mostly accurate. So I asked, so will I have a long life or something? She stood up and patted my head as she slid open the curtain to usher me out. Long or short, it is not mine to say, or yours for that matter. Only quality. But that part is up to you. Remember what I told you. Not knowing how else to end all this, I simply said, yes, ma'am, and stepped into the next room. Angie looked both amused and excited as we switched places. She smiled at me as we passed one another, but didn't say anything. I settled in on a dusty and overly soft couch that felt like sitting on a stale marshmallow, only less comfortable. It was clearly designed for a shorter person, and I felt like a giant on it. I studied my hands for a minute and wondered if there was anything to what Madame Marie had said, but I kind of blew it off. It was still really warm and the light was dim, so I closed my eyes for a second and must have dozed off. Because the next thing I remember was seeing Angie throw the curtain aside and storming out of the room, saying something I didn't understand, clearly upset. As I followed her out, I turned back and saw Madame Marie with an amused grin and a sort of mischievous look in her eyes. She nodded to me, saying, You don't want to let her get away now, dear. I must have looked lost, because she then pointed in the direction in which Angie had stormed off. I took off after her, confused, to say the least, and now suddenly very worried about my friend. The sunlight blasted me in the face on leaving her store, and it took me a minute to figure out where Angie had gone. She was sitting on the bench just across the boardwalk with her back to me, looking out at the shore. She was smoothing out her skirt on her lap and catching her breath, so I could tell she was still upset. I walked up behind her and put my hands on her shoulders. That bad, huh? That was apparently the wrong thing for me to say to her. She stood up quickly and turned to face me, the bench still between us. She exhaled heavily and had her fierce eyes trained on me at first. I must have made a face or something because her shoulders kind of fell and she shook her head and started off back toward the boardwalk, down the boardwalk. Come on, she said. I jogged after her and caught up. What happened back there, Angie? I'd prefer not to discuss it. But you're still upset, Ange. Let's talk about it. What did she do that got you so angry? She stopped walking but didn't say anything. Maybe I can help, I asked. She could be so closed off sometimes, but I hadn't seen her like this ever before. I didn't know what to do. I was normally the one who needed calming down. She looked at me and seemed to be thinking until she put her arm around me and started walking again. She said something I didn't want to hear today, and I decided I didn't want to hear anymore because I get to do that. Angie, in 4 years, I've never seen you react like that to something. I mean, I've never seen you flip out. Well, that's not what I was going to say, but okay, yeah. Well, my friend, that doesn't mean I haven't flipped out in the last 4 years. She hadn't broken her stride or slowed down, but her voice seemed calmer as she continued. You may now buy me breakfast. I wonder now if I should have pushed her on that, but in the moment I decided to shut up and not say the wrong thing again. Okay, so that is the end of chapter 2. If we decide to do another one of these in the future, we'll pick it up obviously with chapter 3. And I appreciate very much all of you who have logged in and checked things out. Just a reminder, you can see the pictures that are shared in this particular chapter grouping on my blog. I posted them there. I had meant to screen share during this, but I probably should have tried that out earlier and made sure I knew what I was doing. So, but all the pictures, there's some pictures that of the Wildwood sign. There's some pictures of Wildwood itself. There's a picture of a 1992 blue Mercury tracer. So absolutely, please feel free to check those out. Subscribe, like, comment, share, all that good stuff. But this is my first foray into kind of sharing the books in an audio way. Just a reminder, at robertkuglerbooks.com, you can get a free ebook copy of The Last Good Day. It is perma-free. It is available on every single platform where books are sold. If you would like to get it on Kobo, or you'd like to get it on Barnes and Noble, or you'd like to get it even on Amazon, you can go. I'll put that here in the comments, and I'll put it in the comments on Facebook, on YouTube when we post it there as well. You can get a free copy of The Last Good Day. Uh, it's perma-free. It'll be free forever because the hope is that you'll get that one and want to check out the rest. So again, robertkuglerbooks.com. If you have any questions or want to want me to do more of these, we can see how it goes. I've just done the first 2 chapters. We can pick it up with chapter 3 the next time, but I think we'll see how this goes. And hopefully people will enjoy it and share it. And I figure this is another way for us to get the books out there in front of people. So again, this was the first 2 chapters of The Last Good Day. robertkuglerbooks.com is where you can learn more. And please have a great night. Thanks for tuning in.